everyone, today welcome back to another opening video. Last time we looked at some Sicilian variations, but today we are going to be taking a look at the infamous, popularized by Levi Rossman, the Caro Kann defense. Now the point of the Caro Kann is to absolutely annoy your opponent. No, I'm joking, of course. The point is to strike in the center with d4 while preparing with c6. It kind of looks like the French, even though it isn't. But yeah, these lines can get very fun, but it's pretty much just a very solid opening. If white chooses to play more aggressively, then this is going to be more of an exciting game. But if white chooses to play solidly, then black's just going to have a fine position. Let's start in this video with the advanced variation. Now tomorrow I'm going to release the other variations, like the exchange, and in the exchange a Panov and the normal variation, and like the Tartakower variation, so the classical variation with white and some fantasy and stuff. But today we are simply going to be looking at the advanced variation, which is a large topic in the Caro Kann because it is the most fighting response. So I do recommend bishop f5. c5 is just, I personally don't like c5 that much as black. I prefer bishop f5 and think it's just a better variation. Now white can do a few things here. Knight f3 is the short variation. He's going to play bishop e2 and like knight d2 and c3 in castle, and this is going to be a very solid game. h4 is the tall variation, which is crazy tactical, and where white often gets great positions with a lot of space. And there are also a few sidelines here, like bishop d3 and c4. But the main line is the short variation, which we will be taking a look at. Now e6 is the best move here, and like bishop e2 is basically always played here if they know what they're doing. Now if they play c4 here though, you don't really take the pawn. You want to play bishop e4, or something like knight d2. Now you take bishop takes, and the point here is just you play like knight e7. You occupy this square here. Knight d7. Maybe you play c5, but like if a3, you can simply take the knight. Bishop takes, and you have equalizing the opening, and you're just going to put a knight here and have a nice game. If they try something like knight h4, wait, what am I talking about? So you have to move their bishop first, but like if they, like a5 here is the best move, like you castle or something, and just have a nice game. So c4 is maybe not the most accurate way. More bishop e2 is the way to go. Here c5 can be played, but c5 is a bit, yeah, it's a bit weird. I mean, if you take there, you're obviously better. But if they just play something like bishop to e3, you take, and now you play knight e7, and if they take, obviously, again, you have a good game. But like if they just play c4 here, this is going to be a very difficult game. Because even though in the Caro Kann you're trying to chip at white center, now he's chipping at your center. And he's trying to take here and get some weak pawns out of you. So I recommend going for knight to e7. And the point why you play this is because you want to bring this knight to c6 and this knight to d7. Why do you do that? Because you want to pressure e5, first of all, with two knights, and then you have this knight here. If you were to put this knight on c6, this knight isn't doing anything. It's kind of bad actually on e7. So you want to put this knight here and this knight here to have optimal pressure. So castle is the main move here, and now c5. If they take the pawn, now you see the plan. Knight e to c6 looking kind of weird, but it does make sense because they're hitting this pawn, and knight d7 is now going to come with a fork. So the best move here is bishop g5, but now simply bishop e7. After they trade c4 and take queen c5, you have a great position. You're even a bit better here. This pawn is super weak, and this queen is a target here, so they have to spend a tempo here with queen e2. And you can simply castle, occupy the d-file, and have some active pieces here, and this bishop is very good here also. But most likely they're not going to do that. They're going to play maybe something like c3, which also isn't the best. So knight c6 here, again, you see the same thing with the idea of going here. Bishop e3, and now knight d7, and now you see these knights in action. Again, if they would have taken here, this is almost lost here because of bishop c5. And now this pawn is a super weakness here for them. But yeah, more than likely they're not going to take here, but instead play something like knight d2, which is a reasonable move. But now black again has equalized. Like the short variation, even though it is principled and good, at the end of the day, you're not going to get that great positions with white. So bishop e7 here is just simply played, and now the best move is to use this tempo spent with the bishop, so that it has to move again, and now knight d4. And I mean, you just take, oh, sorry, you don't take, you take on e5. And this is a crazy position because you have this amazing control of the square here, where knight e4 is a good move. And you are actually a bit better here, maybe slightly, but it is basically equal. Like something like bishop b5 is the best move. Simply king f8, not wasting any time by bringing the knights back. Rook e1, simply like knight e4, take. And I mean, you have an insane position here. Knight d3 is looking juicy. If they tried peeking at this, simply rook d5, and you just have a nice position. Now I don't have to play c3 here. After c5, they can also play something different. They can play knight a3, which if they're prepared, they will probably play this. And this is a very weird variation because the point is, I think, still to play c3, or no, wait, the point is to play c4. But you can simply go knight e to c6, and this is very simple. Basically, in all variations, you just play normal moves. Like here, they only have one move. If they play something like bishop g5, or if they play c3, they are simply worse because you can take and again take. So they have to play actively and play c4. And c4, now this is getting dicey because you have to find good moves here. Bishop e4 is a move. But bishop b4 is hard to explain, and I wouldn't recommend you playing this, but simply knight d4 is also a good move. Knight d4, cd4, the point is you're attacking this knight, and now knight to b5 has to be played, and now you can actually just take on c4, looking kind of greedy, but after knight d4, now bishop b4, the idea is to go here. Like, if they just take, now you can play knight c6, and you're guarding this knight. So, if they like take, you just play bishop c6, and you have a very good position. But queen a4 is the best move, and here knight to c6, they will play like rook d1. And this is, again, I mean, white is a bit better. I mean, what do you expect if white plays perfect moves for 30 moves straight? White is obviously going to be a bit better. But I mean, you can definitely win this. Like queen b6. I mean, just have a nice position. Like, if they can already mess up by doing this, and like you have equalized here, and this is fine. And I would say if anybody's winning this, it's black, because these pieces are quite active. Like bishop c5, and you're putting pressure here, and yeah, just have a nice position. Now going back to the position here, if they play c4 immediately, now what you have to do is play knight b to c6. Now this sounds kind of confusing, because we've put the e knight to c6 all this time. But if you put the e knight to c6, simply takes. You need this, simply put, you need this knight defending here. If you take with the pawn, bishop g5, if you try the typical bishop e7, knight e7, and dc5. You're simply down the pawn here. And even though this pawn looks quite weak, you can't actually get it back that easily, because if you play knight c6, knight c3, and this pawn is weak, and he's just simply a pawn up. So you have to play knight b to c6 with the idea of defending this pawn. So the best move here is knight to c3. You want to take here. That is the point. And now this queen trade is kind of forced because, let's say you play knight d5. Looks reasonable, right? It's an okay move, but knight d4. And I mean, knight c3, bc3, and now bishop to e4. Bishop f3 take. Queen takes. Now you have to play something like queen to d7 to guard this knight here. And I mean, if they find bishop a3, this is very impressive, of course. But simply like something like queen g3, and white has some very active pieces here with these rooks, and your queen is still on the g-file. So I mean, you're fine here, obviously. Actually, you're almost equal, but this is hard to play for white. So you have to be careful here not to play something like knight d5. Instead, you have to take first. And now you can play knight d5. And this might look weird giving up a pawn, but you're really not, because bishop e6 and rook d2, now bishop c5. And you have equalized from a material point of view, but your pieces are looking quite nice, and you have a lot of space here with this pawn. Try and attack it, simply knight to b4, knight is getting into d3, and b5 is being played. So that was a short variation. Looks kind of boring, but I would say black typically has more fun in this variation. But now, the most exciting variation in the advanced Caro Kann, the Tal variation. Right here, invented by the man Michal Tal. There is something to note here already. If e6, looking like a normal move, g4, f3, h5, bye-bye bishop. So obviously you shouldn't play this. You should try to stop this bishop from being trapped. h6 can be played, but g4, f3, bishop h7. And the reason you play this is, with black, is you're saying even though he has all this space, this is kind of hindering his development. Like the knight can go to f3 and his king side is kind of a bit weakened because this is weak and such things. But I don't really like going into this. You should just play h5, stopping all of this nonsense. And in this variation, black's plan is basically to play c4 and trade off these bishops here. They can do that immediately, which is a very solid plan. e6, and they just play like knight f3. And the idea is bishop g5, and they have a very nice position. Unless you play queen a5. And the idea is that they do want to play c4, and if they play knight d2, you just keep the queen here. Pinning this, c4 isn't that good now. You just play knight d7 here, and you're fine. Like, they have to, like if they the castle, now you go queen a6 because it's not pinned anymore, c4. And this is still a fighting position, obviously. And you're good here. You've almost equalized in the opening, which is always good. But if they don't play like that, like if they another variation, they can play immediately c4. But you just play e6 and like knight c3, and now bishop b4. And if they play a3, you simply take the bishop and play knight e7, guard your center, and have a nice position. So c4 isn't anything special, but another variation that is very sharp is bishop g5. Now, you might see that the engine absolutely hates this variation and immediately gives an edge to black, but there is actually a nasty trick here. Queen b6, bishop d3, take, knight f3, takes here, b6 and e6. Insane move. And even though you lose all of this material, the idea is knight c3, you have to give up the queen back, and black is up 3 points of material, but still it's completely losing because these light squares are so weak, and white is putting a knight on e5, bringing his queen back, chipping at the center, threatening these pawns here, and this is over. So you should never fall for this. Here you can actually take the pawn, which is a super sharp variation. The idea is knight f3, queen g4, bishop f5, queen f5, and you are fine. Like if c4, you can just go queen e4 and e6, and you have a good position. You're actually a bit better here. Oh, yeah. And the idea is if takes, you get b2. Oh, actually no, you get e5 tempo, and you get the bishop back. That is the idea. But I mean, what you can simply also do here is take the bishop and play like e6, and you've equalized and you're completely fine. So this bishop g5 variation, if you know what you're doing, is absolutely trash. Never be afraid of this. You can even play f6 here. That's how trash this variation is. Taking with the e pawn here. Bishop goes back. Queen e7 check. Knight, like say knight here. Knight e7, you have a great position also. But I would recommend queen b6, not going for this too soon. Like if they can also play knight f3 here. No, they can't. No, they can't, because they haven't traded out the bishop. So now you can actually take. You can only not take if they have played bishop d3. So, I mean, the best computer move is bishop c1. I mean, but even here, bishop d3, take. You can go into this variation. This is not that bad. Actually, no, wait, it is what I'm talking about. No, yeah, you have to play e6 here, and take. I'm sorry. Knight e2, c5. Also, a very good position because the bishop is absolutely staring into nothing. So you have a good position here as well. So even though the Tal variation is sharp, really, unless they are playing bishop d3 and pushing for c4, you have nothing to be afraid of. Because these variations simply aren't that great. And for now, I'll see you tomorrow. Like, subscribe, comment, and goodbye.